Okay, I want to go over my terrarium and the process that I took to create my terrarium with you guys. So for my first step, I chose to use a gallon water bottle and lima beans. Also, I already had the moss, pebbles, and soil at my house. I chose to use the gallon water bottle because that's what I had on hand. And I followed pretty much the same steps that were suggested for the 2-liter bottle. I cut the top off and then began my layering process. I created first a layer of pebbles, then I put some moss, then soil, moss, and then more soil. And you can see here what my layers looked like from the outside of the bottle. The next step in my process, I poked a hole in each corner of the terrarium and planted a seed in each corner. Um, I tried to ensure that they were at least 1/4 of an inch down. And finally, I added water. You can see the moss and pebbles created a drainage system. So once the soil was exposed to water and became saturated, the excess water drained to the bottom of the terrarium. I feel like this will aid in avoiding overwatering, yet will allow moisture to remain in the terrarium. This is my final product. So after I watered my terrarium, I put the top of the bottle back on, and I plan to put my terrarium in a window where it'll get plenty of sun. And then for the watering process, I will remove the cap and water probably about once weekly or as needed, based on the amount of water that's in the bottom of the bottle. Another thing I plan to monitor is whether the cap needs to be off or if maybe I need to poke holes for extra airflow. A little bit of extra credit. I also started seeds in Ziploc and paper towel to see which plant grows faster. This is a project I have done with my preschoolers when I was teaching preschool, and it was just a fun project. But I also did this because it was something I would add to the 5E lesson plan. So I would divide this activity into 2 separate parts for the 5E lesson plan. After explaining the lesson and the goal to the students, I'd break them into small groups for the exploration part of the lesson plan. And I would have each group create a terrarium. I'd provide them with materials, all the materials they'd need, and allow them choices of whether they want to use a water bottle, a 2-liter bottle, um, and allow for suggestions if they wanted to create their own style of terrarium, maybe with some wire and saran wrap, and give them a little bit of freedom with that. Once they've created their terrarium as a group, each student individually would keep a journal and log the progression of the terrarium. How often it needs to be watered, how quickly the plants are growing, um, what the drainage system looked like, etc. And then during the elaboration part of the lesson plan, I would have the students individually plant their own seed in a Ziploc bag, and I'd allow them their choice of cotton, paper towel, or soil to plant their seed in, and then they could tape it to the window within the classroom and track the progression of their own plant. This would allow for a little bit of comparing and contrasting and allow them to see which is faster. You know, whether the terrarium was faster or if it was a little bit faster in the Ziploc. And here is the final product of my terrarium. I planted my terrarium on Friday, and the water has pretty much evaporated. There's still a little bit in there, so I'm going to kind of monitor. My original plan was about weekly, but I'm thinking maybe about every 3 days it may need water, 3 or 4 days. And also my seeds, I don't know if you'll be able to see. My seeds have kind of worked their way back towards the top. So I'm going to keep monitoring this. It was a super fun project, and I'm going to keep monitoring my terrarium to see what happens. All right, guys, I hope you enjoy.